So it is now 12:30 or 12:45 my time. So I'm going to get started. I see everyone in the chat is jumping on and saying hi. That's fantastic. Hello to all of you. Couple of things before we get started. One is please use the chat. If you have a question at any time, feel free to put it in. Both myself and Nora are monitoring it. I also have the app on my phone open if you prefer to use the app and put your questions in there. I am very easy to stop along the way because this whole presentation really is for you all, and I want to make sure that it meets what you hope you get out of it. So with that going, basically today for the next hour or so, we're going to talk a little bit more about ensuring you're getting pretty much your whole entire community and covering all of your bases in terms of recruiting. I'm labeling this as, have we really reached everybody? And it's something that in my career in the migrant ed program, I've been really focused on. So to start off, I figured the easiest way to do it would actually be to tell you a little bit about who I am and a little bit about Massachusetts. So I am actually the state program director of the Massachusetts Migrant Education Program. I've been doing this for over 10 years now at the state level. And then prior to that, I was actually a regional program director within the migrant ed program and really focused sort of in the northeast part of the state. Before that, I was actually a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic. I spent 4 years there. A lot of Peace Corps volunteers spend too. I decided to stay a little longer. And the thing I got to do there was create networks, and it's something that is very applicable here as well. So I'm always looking at what I've been able to do in the past and how do I put it forward with the migrant program. My background is in education, but it's a little funky. I have always been interested in looking at education from a community standpoint. I was actually, school is not my jam. I tell my kids this all the time, like I did my best in school. I worked myself, I worked as hard as I could, but it definitely was not where I learned the most or probably the best. It was really being out and about. And so my background is actually in what's called museum education. It's looking at how do you leverage resources in the community, including museums, libraries, et cetera, to really support and work with the schools, but also to think about how you can, add to something. So if a student isn't like, they learn something in school, but how do they apply it, or all the different creative ways you can learn. So that's sort of my background. For those of you who don't know Massachusetts, it's a super tiny state. We are in the northeast section of the United States, and I live where that star is. I like to joke that we're sort of the buffet of migrant education. We have fishing, we have processing, we have ag, we have tobacco. We got a little bit of everything. And I even joke that we have wildlife in the city because we have turkeys everywhere for some reason. Massachusetts has both agriculture and fishing. So for agriculture in Massachusetts, we're only about 10,000, a little close to, let's not push it, 10,000 square miles. It really, if we go back to the map, it only takes me 2 hours to drive from Boston to Springfield, which is one of our big populations. We get around pretty quickly. We have only about 8% of our state is actually used for farm operations. But that said, there are about a little under 8,000 farm operations in the state. And we actually have had a growth in the number of farms, as well as the acres that are being used for farmland. And it's primarily actually women farmers and women owners that are really sort of growing this industry here in Massachusetts. Crops are definitely the largest source of income in terms of agriculture, and that's not including the fishing industry. And our largest agricultural crop is actually cranberries. We have about 375 growers throughout the state. They're primarily concentrated near the ocean, but that is another large industry. A lot of our workers also will actually work in neighboring states, primarily Connecticut. Connecticut and Massachusetts are actually known for the tobacco that is used in cigars. And so tobacco is actually a pretty significant industry here in the state. Fish are also a big thing here. We're pretty much known for our seafood. I saw Maine was up there in two, but they have the lobsters, we have the cod. We also are one of the largest commercial fishing states especially in the East Coast. We have over 1,500 miles of coastline, and New Bedford, which is one of our migratory populations, accounts for 50% of all the scallops that are produced in the country. New Bedford is also one of the ports that comes in and receives seafood from other parts of the world and does all the processing. So it's a big industry. So just to recap, Massachusetts, small state, has a lot of stuff going on in it. We have fishing, we have processing, both meat and fish and vegetables and fruit. We have a fair amount of nurseries, a variety of vegetables that are grown in cranberries. You can see on the map where our primary populations are the red stars. We also have them out on the islands. And so we are a small but busy state. Gives you a little taste of who we are and what we do in my state. But what we're going to do today is talk a little bit more about thinking creatively. When I was getting ready to do this presentation, I thought long and hard. I was like, wow, we're going to have a lot of people from all over the country. There are going to be some people that will have been doing this for years. There'll be some people that haven't, that are new to this and haven't done recruiting yet, or have been doing it only school-based, et cetera. And also there's some that are like in small areas, there's some that are in large areas. The way I've decided to approach this presentation is actually to start thinking about ways we can think about recruiting. What I've seen across the board, and both within my state, but also working with a lot of different states, is that people sort of get into a rhythm and they don't necessarily think differently, or they don't really say like, oh, I could do something, I could change it up. It's working, it's doing fine. And that was the attitude of a lot of the staff in Massachusetts. But one of the big things that I come about is our job, this is entitled services for migratory students and children and youth. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we really are meeting and finding and serving all of them. There are some that are super obvious, right? They're moving for a harvest, they're here, they're here for a short time, and we know who they are. But especially with the new, the regulations under ESSA, it changes that. They don't have to be engaged in work right now. They could be doing something completely different, but they still qualify for services. And so what I want to talk about today, and what we're going to sort of go through, is what does it mean to be creative? And how does that apply in IDNR and in our recruiting? And then to also talk about some processes that like you might go through, or you might work with on your team. You can do it individually, that just help you rethink your practice as a recruiter. So the first thing about being creative, everyone's like, oh, I'm not very creative. Oh, no, I'm not this, because they think it has to be about like arts and crafts, and that's not what this is about. Being creative is just a way of thinking. So the first thing is, there is no bad idea. No idea is a bad idea at first. It might end up being not that great of an idea, but if you limit yourself right off the bat, what is that going to really help you? I'm obviously not talking about like, oh, is it a good idea to like throw knives at someone? Obviously that's a bad idea, but I don't want to limit like when we come down to recruitment. Sometimes you don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea. You have to try it out, and not be afraid to try things out and say, how do I know if it worked? How did I didn't? The other thing I would say is sometimes even hearing a bad idea, even saying it out loud, is a great way to think about whether it might spur a new idea. So just to keep those in mind as we go through. And then I thought a lot about like, what does it mean to be creative? Because again, like I've had people that are like, oh, I'm not creative. Like, no, actually you probably are. because it doesn't mean like you have to be thoughtful. It's having these skill sets. So when we think about creative, you need to be analytical. You need to think about like, what does this mean? You have to be organized. You have to be able to communicate. You have to have an open mind, and you have to be an innovative thinker. So I want to talk about those 5 different things, and then a little bit more about what it means in terms of IDNR. So to be analytical means that you're able to examine information, collect facts, and use your reasoning to see if it makes sense to figure something out. So with an IDNR, it helps you think about like, what are some challenges and possible solutions? Hey, I can't get on this farm anymore. The employer is just dead set and won't let us on. Okay, so that's a roadblock. But does that mean that you don't get to go and work and try to meet those workers and try to help them and see if they qualify? No, it just means that you have to think about what are some of the other ways around that. It can help you make decisions about what to try out. We all have limited time. We all have limited resources. So thinking about how much time, how many people it would involve, how much money it would involve, how many relationships, et cetera, will help you think about whether that makes a good, do I want to try it or not? It also gives you ideas of what's working and what isn't. And then with things that are working for you, well, why is it working? Is this something I can replicate? Are there lessons learned by the way I'm doing something now that's working really well that will help me be able to do something better in a different area? Or, hey, this really isn't working. Why isn't it working? It also is a way to help understand where you want to continue to put resources. And by resources, a lot of times I'm just talking about your time, or move those resources. Where do you want to redirect? Being organized. Recruiters, we all have to be organized. We all know that. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of information. You're trying to follow up and make sure everything is covered. You all have COEs to process. But being organized in terms of creative thinking is thinking about information, again, using that reasoning and seeing if it makes sense. So thinking about IDNR, it gives you structure when you're trying something new. If you want to see if something new is working, and then you want to try to think about it in terms of like, was it successful or not? Being organized and being able to say, oh, well, here's this activity I tried. I got 40 referrals out of it, but out of those 40 referrals, only 2 of them qualified. But it took me a lot of work. Do I want to repeat that if I didn't get a big result, or did I, et cetera? But you need to know what those pieces are and keep them in track. You also get to demonstrate to people that, hey, this is something that worked. It might be a fellow colleague. It might be your supervisor who's giving you this opportunity and be like, hey, I actually need this because this is working really well. And you can see that there's follow through. And it also helps set a record in history for any new people coming on. For example, when I came in and started working, I asked a recruiter of ours, I was like, hey, what about all those apple farms? And she was like, oh yeah, we visited them a long time ago. They had all these guys, they didn't qualify. Well, where's the information about that? How long ago? Oh, I don't remember. Oh, which farms did you visit? Oh, I don't remember. Oh, so I made them do it again because she didn't have that information. I was taking it from her word, but things may have changed. Workers change all the time. Farms close, farms open. And so keeping track of all of that information is really helpful in terms of looking at that historical record and planning going forward. Communication. You need to be able to clearly say what you're meaning and your thoughts, and listening to others, and being able to exchange ideas. If you want to try something new in terms of your recruitment and you're not able to explain what you're planning on doing or how you're doing it, how is somebody going to help you? So it's that piece. But the other side of it is really actively listening too, picking up on what people are saying, knowing how to respond to somebody is a very big thing, because there's a lot of times people are saying the same ideas, but they think that they're against each other, or they're not in the same page. And having that ability to listen and know where to leverage and so on is really important too, in terms of creative recruitment and thinking, did I cover everything? Having an open mind. I sound like making a dad joke. I talk a lot about throwing spaghetti on the wall when somebody that I work with comes with me to me with a new idea. We talk it out, and the only way we're going to know if that idea is going to work is if we try it out. And we call it throwing spaghetti at the wall. You throw it on the wall when spaghetti is fully cooked, it's supposed to stick. And so if you're trying something and you throw the spaghetti at the wall and it sticks and it works, then you have a new way of recruiting and you're sort of covering all your area. It also helps you build those relationships that are really important and open. Hearing somebody, what they're working on, talking to a store owner and seeing who's coming through, paying attention to all those details and being open to it are really important. And lastly is being reflective of your practice. I talk about this a lot with my staff, is like, okay, you've been doing the same thing for a long time. Is it accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish? Is there a different way we can do it? Is there a smarter way to do it? And having that open mind and being able to think about things is really key. And the last is innovative thinking. Coming up with new ideas and new approaches to what you're doing. Thinking and adapting on your feet, being resourceful in unexpected situations. What happens when you used to be able to go to the processing plants and go in and hang out in the lunchroom, and now you can't? Any of us that worked through the past 2 years with pandemics, obviously we had to be adaptable and resourceful in terms of what we were dealing with. And those are all really strong traits that people don't necessarily recognize in themselves, but being able to think about that, being open and to the idea that maybe there's a better way to do this, maybe there's a more improved way of doing it, and also always seeing it through fresh eyes. I have some veteran staff who've been doing things for a long time, but pairing them with new staff actually gives them an opportunity to say, oh yeah, they do it in a different way, but maybe I can adapt and try a new way. So just thinking about those things as we approach talking about recruitment. So my next section really is talking about ideas and examples you can try in your own program to think about, are you making sure you're reaching all your potential students? And I say students, I also mean obviously out of school youth, but we're gonna branch them together. So here are some other things that I've heard recruiters, like, I make sure to pay attention to when their soccer events are happening, and then I bring Gatorades to the soccer field. It's a great way to talk to people when they're not working, and they make a connection there, and they know I'm sort of showing up and who I am. Recruiting has always been visits to the farm housing, been doing it this whole entire time. We've had good recruitment, but then I started thinking, like, I don't think everyone's living on this farm. I see a lot of workers that are not living on the farm. So where are they? Where are they living? And how do I make sure that I'm reaching them? I've had other people say, I've noticed that one of the high schools in my area was getting a lot of newly arrived students and starting a SLIFE program. SLIFE is students with limited and interrupted formal education. So basically anyone second grade up who has missed at least a year of school. But now the recruiter actually goes into this classroom once or twice a year and presents to those students. And the teacher then calls to say, hey, I have some new students I think that will qualify. And that's a new source of recruitment. And I've had folks be like, well, what if there are English speaking OSY? They're not going to want English classes. That's my pitch. That's how I've been talking about this. We offer English classes. So what would they want? And these are all really valid ways of thinking about, hey, did I cover everywhere? So one method that can be used is brainstorming or making a mind map. For those of you that haven't led this before or haven't done something like this before, you're basically posing the question to a group, and it's an open-ended question. It can be, you can also do this on your own, but the question should be specifically around trying to think differently about recruiting and differently potentially around services. So because I knew this was going to be this sort of mega group and it would be hard for us to do an activity together, I am sort of sketching this out for you. The first The question I'm asking is, you've just moved to a new place. You don't speak the dominant language and you don't know that many people. What do you need? And where are you going to go for those needs? Like, what do you need as the basic thing? And so this would be a brainstorm I would do with somebody. So I would want people to write down everything that they would need if they were in that situation. And then think about like, well, where did I go? Where would I go to get those? And so you would have, you and your team or you and yourself would brainstorm these and you would sort of write them up. So I sort of did that ahead of us. So needs, they need food. They need to know where they can get food, etc. They have kids. They need to know where their kids are going to go to school and where they're going to get childcare. It could be early childhood, childcare for their little kids. It could be what's going to happen in the summer, what's going to happen in after school. But what are my children going to be doing? I might need work. Where am I working, etc. I need to know how to handle my finances. And I might need stuff for my house, right? Great one. Yeah. Where do I get a phone? How do I get internet? All of those things. So when you first move, these are sort of the big things. Where do they go? They go to grocery stores. They go to sort of cheap restaurants because maybe they don't have a lot of food. They're going to go to restaurants where they appreciate the food. So if you have one for somebody from a specific culture, targeting where they might be going. Schools, obviously the enrollment centers at schools, or if the schools themselves are the enrollment centers. Childcare, you could go to home babysitting groups. Churches a lot of times have that, the Head Start programs, early childhood programs, etc. Work, farms, temp agencies, any place that is work in your area, right? Check cashing places, Western Union, or ways to send money home, sometimes the banks. And then home goods, thinking about like secondhand stores, the Salvation Army, Walmart, etc. So we now have sort of this list of places where basic needs and where are they going. Then the next one would be, well, what's the recruitment technique that I would use for that area? So if it's thinking about grocery stores and cheap restaurants, putting out flyers, hanging up posters, visiting those places on a regular basis, possibly tabling outside of them. And you can see that I went through and sort of thought about the different recruitment techniques that I would use in those sort of settings. So now all of a sudden we have this sort of mapped out ideas of where we could potentially be recruiting. Next step, repeat the process. But now with the question of, you've now lived in that place for about a year. You got the basics down, but you want to start getting more involved in your community. Where are you going? And again, what do they want? Where are they going to go to? And what are those recruitment techniques? So maybe they're looking to get more established with their faith. Where is their churches? Are they going in their native languages? What is the denomination of that church? Those might be all good things to be thinking about. They want to learn English. So where's your adult education center? Where are those libraries that might be offering things, or the community centers or the churches, etc. Recreation. I got my kids, I need something for them for the summer. Where are the YMCA? Where are those parks, those soccer, fields, etc. And then potentially medical dental if they're not connected in with that. So where are those clinics that are serving this population? And again, the recruitment technique. So now we've done 2 maps of some really cool stuff, right? Then you have this list. You can list all of your recruitment places. And then I would go through and I would highlight, okay, where are the ones that we recruit a lot now? And you sort of say, oh, that's what I did with the green. Where are places we occasionally go? And then where are we not recruiting, but maybe we should? So just by doing this process, we've now sort of developed a plan of places that like, hey, I haven't been going there. I want to make sure I'm hitting up them, and let me go make some outreach. And so this could be a very simple process that helps you and your team and your, whatever group you're working with, think through, hey, are we really making sure that we're covering every place? So by doing this, we've now thought about recruitment through the eyes of the people we're trying to serve and at different stages. And we went through the brainstorm and identified where we're going, where we occasionally go, do we need to visit there more, or where are the places we haven't been paying attention to, and should we? The next area I would think about is messaging. What are we saying? What are our recruitment materials saying? And who is it reaching? So I just put some ideas up. What are we saying? We offer academic supports to your children. We serve farm workers. We offer English class to youth. So who are we targeting with those messages? Academic supports, we're targeting school-age children. We serve farm workers, sounds pretty much like we're just targeting current workers. And English classes will obviously be to non-English speaking youth. But who might be missing in that? Well, if we're only talking about academic supports for children, we're forgetting that OSY might not tag in on that one, right? And dropouts and people who don't know what academic support means. Serving farm workers, if we're only saying we serve farm workers, people might have it in their mind that, oh, we're just serving the ones right now. But it excludes potentially those who have a history of the qualifying work but aren't currently working, or who have done the work in the past. And the last with the like, oh, we offer English classes to youth, anyone that's already fluent in English isn't going to be responsive. So then we think about, well, what should we change or add? Well, maybe when I'm talking about things or my messaging, I'm going to make sure that I think about what would OSY, what would dropout students who are now OSY, what would they potentially be interested in? How can I spell out what academic support means? We serve farm workers. Now I got to think about language. I don't want to talk about, are you currently doing this work? I want to talk about, hey, do you have a history of this? Have you ever done this work before? Even if it's for a day. And with the English classes, it's like, well, what would those services be? What would they be interested in? Maybe it's that they want to get back into high school. Maybe it's that they want to learn how to open a bank account. What is it? So it's just another method of thinking about what are we doing? Are we really reaching everybody? My last one will be more about data. How are you spending time and resources? And it is in the most effective way. One of my things that I don't like to do is I don't like to waste time. I want to make sure that we're all working at our best. And a lot of that comes down to thinking about what are we doing and how do we do it? And can we do it better? Can we do it collaboratively? What is somebody else doing that maybe will be helpful for me? Or what am I doing that's helpful for others? So I'm going to walk through 3 different kinds of questions and show a little bit about how you can use data and some information to change the way or maybe realize that you're doing a great job. So my initial question is, how are my recruiters spending their time? I don't know exactly what they're doing. They're out and about, not 100% sure. Now, part of this is to make sure that like they're using their time effectively. It could also be used as, hey, how can I be best supportive to the student and to the recruiters? So the data source that I'm going to use is I'm going to look at their data activity log. Like, what are they doing on a daily basis? They log their information. How can I use that information? And so I'm going to look at their logs and think about the activities that are being done. And then I'm going to look at how much time is being spent on those activities. And then hopefully that information will be able to say like, well, what is it telling me? And making some decisions. Are there areas that we want to change? Why? Why would we change it? Change isn't always the better thing. You could be having a great program, could be great, don't need to change it. And then what would the impact be? Both positives and potentially negatives to current recruitment outcomes, because we really just want to be able to improve, but we don't want to damage or take away from something that's already working. So here's how my recruiters are spending their time. Right now, they're spending about 12% of their time doing employer visits, 20% doing COE interviews, 30% in the office, 20% providing service, and 18% doing some family support. So if I were looking at that, I'd be like, wow, that's a lot of time in the office. What are they doing there? And if I really want my recruiters out in the field and not sitting in the office, because 30 hours is a lot, that's pretty much like 2 days of their week. Some of the questions I'm going to ask are, what are they doing? Is there a way to reduce or reassign some of the tasks that they're doing? Maybe that doesn't make the best sense. And is there a better way to have them do those tasks? Do they have to come into the office? there's a lot of technology out there. Could they be doing some of the stuff? How do I make their job easier so that they don't have to be sitting there for that long of a time? The other thing I noticed is, whoa, they're spending more time providing services and support to families, which is not a bad thing, but doing it less than employer visits and COE interviews. So we're talking 38 to 32%. Not huge, right? But if I want to make sure recruiters are really able to be out there doing their employer visits and getting the COEs in and being able to interact with families at that level, is there another person or another kind of position that's needed to provide those services and support? Can I afford it? Is that a possibility? And then how can I change the work culture to make sure that recruiters are able to do that from doing less service provision, but still being able to recruit? Because we all know that you can recruit, but if you're not doing services, you sort of shoot yourself in the foot because the two go hand in hand. So this is what is a good point around like that negative versus positive impact. If I start pulling people away a little bit from from doing the service and family support, we need to make sure somebody's doing it, because the recruiter might feel like, oh, I'm just recruiting people and there's no services behind, and those all have to work really well together. But if you're wondering how you're spending your time and is it worthwhile, you can look at that and start looking at your data and say, whoa, I spent a lot of time doing this, driving to places and people don't show up. What are some better ways for me to do that? So it's just another way of thinking about both on a big picture as well as a small picture, an individual level, like how am I spending my time and is it the best way to be using my time? Is it getting what really is what I'm supposed to be doing in my job? Here's my next initial question. We get a lot of school screeners in, but how many are actually leading to COEs? So I can look at the screener follow-up data. Okay, from the screeners we get in, what's happening? And let me tally those numbers up and then look at those outcomes. And again, I'm looking at those decisions, like the numbers of referrals and screeners that are coming in, going into COEs. Is that a good amount? Is it not a good amount? What has to happen? And again, there are areas we want to change. Why would we want to change them? And does it have a positive or potentially negative impact on our current recruitment? So here's some data. We can see 206 school referrals came in through screeners. There were 200 non-responses. Web-based, we didn't get any. And M6 move notifications, we had one that came through and they qualified. Then you look at further on, okay, 63 school referrals, 58 didn't respond. 26 came in through web-based, 4 qualified, 13 didn't. And then M6 move notifications, 1 came in and 1 qualified. So when we look at that, we go, whoa, there's a lot of no responses on those school district referrals. That's a lot of work. M6 move notifications are going well. It's a small number, but we contact them and we're able to complete a COE. And we're not having a ton of traffic through that web-based referral portal. And something I can tell you here is that we spend a lot of time on processing those screeners. So is it the best use of our time? And how do we improve that? So here's a way we've thought about it is we felt like we really needed to tweak our training materials. We train all of the frontline staff at school districts, so all the welcome center staff, as well as the family liaisons and the social workers, guidance counselors, et cetera. We wanted to make sure that they were actually able to help and understand what the questions we're asking on the screener. So we thought, hey, let's tweak how we train and also tweak the screeners. Let's change the language up a little bit. And let's see if there's a good change that comes out of it, because it's not something we're ready to abandon. M6 move notifications. Oh, we're doing great there. Celebrate with staff on a job well done, being able to follow up, getting the resources in we need from the other state. Great job. The web-based, do we need to promote it more? Paper screeners we're hearing are more useful. What do we want to do there? And lastly, is there any way to prioritize the screeners so we're not having to spend so much time on the processing of them? And thinking about that first one, the tweaking of our training materials and the screeners themselves, will that actually cut down on how much time we're sort of spending on resources that are, the referrals that aren't really coming to anything? Sort of near the end, and I just wanted to leave room for questions, but a couple of things I want you all to think about when you're thinking, hey, how am I recruiting? Be curious, ask questions about what you're doing. It could be questions about yourself, like, hey, how am I spending my time? It could be questions about your team. It could be questions about your region. There were questions in the chat about like thinking about, is this a city or a county point of view? Like, do I think just about my school? Do I think about this? I think recruiting and making sure you're really canvassing and covering everything, you got to think of all potential partnerships, spaces, and resources. Current and prior families and youth in the program are great resources, right? So how do you foster those relationships? Schools obviously are a great place to recruit. How are we recruiting there? How do we support that? Employers are another place. But then when we think about the community, who are those community agencies? Who are those community members that are interacting with the families and the youth that we're serving? Don't be afraid, like ask the questions. It can be internal and you can just like, I wonder about that. But again, you got to find out, you got to go investigate and check it out, because asking questions comes up with ideas. And if you try ideas out, it changes the way that you can do recruiting. How to kill creativity? Saying, yeah, it's never been done that way before, therefore forget it. Try something new. It's totally great to try something new. You don't have to do a whole entire, huge project. You might want to just try it in a small area. Like, let's see if this works here. It doesn't have to be huge statewide change. It doesn't have to be huge regional or county change. It could just be something that you want to try out, see how it goes, and then amplify it. Lastly, never be afraid to try something new. Life, it gets boring. You've been a recruiter for a really long time. You probably are going through the paces. This is what I do all the time. Could be great. I mean, you could be like that. I'm doing my best job. But again, I'm going to go back to that idea. Are you truly reaching every single kid and every single youth and every single family member that is eligible for these services? They are entitled to these services. It's our responsibility to make sure that we are doing our best job to reach them all. Not just the ones that are really easy to find and recruit, but do we really reach them all that are living in my area? Because if you can try new things, push yourself a little bit just to try something, you'll never know what else you might find. So with that, I want to leave my information up. I'm happy to answer any questions orally on the chat, etc. You are welcome to reach out to me anytime. That's my cell phone. You can text, you can WhatsApp me, you can email me. I'm happy to share what we do. Like, I love talking about this program and helping people think through different ways of trying things in their area, just in what you're doing individually. Please feel free to reach out. Anything I can do to help and support both what you all are doing and what your state is doing to best serve migratory students, I'm all in. So with that, we're ending a couple of minutes early, but I'll hang out for a few more minutes and go from there. And my presentation that's currently up is a modified one. So I will be making sure that the newest version, the one I presented today, is up and available for you all. But with that, thank you.